From Acres USA, you are listening to the Acres USA podcast, a conversational podcast where we'll explore sustainable farming, regenerative practices, and the latest innovations in eco-agriculture with some of your favorite farmers and ranchers. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, the owner and CEO of Acres USA. Welcome to the Acres USA podcast. All right, I'm joined by Justin Pettit of Santa Carota Beef. Justin, thanks for joining us today. We're excited to talk to you. I think you're doing some really unique things in the grass-fed beef world. But welcome to our show. How's everything going out on the ranch these days? What are you guys working on?
Taylor, thanks for having me. It's going well. We got some rain, which is nice. So onwards and upwards with that. We were a little worried for a bit, but I think it's going to end up being a good year.
Yeah, and you guys are located out in Bakersfield, California. Do you want to talk a little bit about the scale of your operation and, how long? What's the history of it?
Yeah, so we are in Bakersfield, California. That's the home of the baby carrot, and we are 8 and 10 miles from the two biggest carrot producers. Um, and so we've essentially built our entire operation the around carrot production. In the mid to late 80s, my grandfather tried to buy a stack of hay from Bill Bolthouse that was grown with wastewater. So they rinse the carrots, for 2 or 3 days, and then the water goes out to the back pasture, and they'll grow non-consumable, non-human food with it. And it's stinky, man. I used to ride around on a three-wheeler in the middle of the night irrigating with my dad when I was like 3 years old. It is a stinky operation, but yeah. So we ended up actually, Mr. Bolthouse said, "What can you do with these baby carrots or what these coal carrots?" And so we fed a few cows with them, and we were discount buying from the cell barn, and it was a cheap feed, and we ended up taking over the hay growing operation. And as the carrot operations grew, we had to grow with it. We ended up, moving off-site and buying some ground, leasing some ground, and we tried everything from cutter cows, which they worked because even when they start losing their teeth, um, they could still, eat some carrot pieces and wiggle a carrot around and eat it. And so we could put pounds on them before they go to, before they're harvested. About 30% of them would even have a calf. So that's how we kind of got started and built a cow herd. Um, and then as that grew, we learned we could background our stockers on it. So, from the time we wean them, we could take them to 800 or 900 pounds and then have a marketable product and make whole loads for feedlots. But then about 10 years ago, my dad and I were making some bread heifers. And, it was a drought time, and we were trying to time the market right to where when it did rain, we had, pregnant females that would be ready to go as other ranchers would replenish their herd. But the ones that wouldn't breed or aborted or were free martin, um, those were kind of losers. They'd have to go back to the cell barn, or we grained a few out and we would sell whole and half animals for folks. But I'd heard of guys finishing on carrots, like military contracts or as a cheaper product, because the carrots, the beta carotene in them, it turns the fat a little bit orange, a little bit yellow. And so we're like, okay, but the grass-fed movement is here and it's coming, and it's really kind of broke the ice for this. Because the packers, they didn't want to see that yellow fat. They wanted to see that white corn fat. And it was kind of a no-no, and we'd get docked and discounted if they saw that. So we tried a few ourselves, and we harvested our first one and ate it on my birthday, April of 2017. And we're like, man, this is good, but now what do we do? You got to go to work because we have a great product. So we fired up marketing, and we kind of looked at what guys had done in the past where they had succeeded and failed, and learned that we need to really lead our sales with ground beef. And because you can make anything into ground beef, but you can't make anything into a fillet. So, we hit the streets, and I was selling meat out of my pickup for a while, and eventually, we found a good ground beef customer, a burger chain that we could scale into. And man, we sold at a loss for about 3 years because, when they got to go, they got to go. And then if you got to sell them, it's either leave it in the freezer or or try to turn it into cash for something. And we broke even about a week or two before COVID hit. And when COVID hit, it shut everything down. And and that was hard because we leaned so hard into food service. We got in with the Win in Las Vegas, and they came out and did a big article on us for their magazine. And the gal who wrote the article sold it to Food and Wine. So we had a great article with Food and Wine magazine, and it said this is what Wolfgang Puck uses, to take home to his family. And yeah, so COVID shut it down, and we learned really fast how important our local markets were. So we ended up jumping in with, farmers markets, and we were trading out restaurants, and that was kind of a struggle for us. It really was. But as things opened back up, we were able to kind of tackle some of the bigger customers we couldn't get because we had a lot of cattle on feed, we had inventory, and it really kind of popped the clutch.
How important was it as you guys were transitioning where you held on to that conventional market to where you could continue the cash flow and bring it in while slowly venturing into the other markets? So you didn't want to obviously just stab a knife in the market that you had been in. And how did you transition, away from that and without, damaging the cash flow of the operation?
We leaned into it hard. We were actually oversold once post COVID, and then once we had a big ground beef customer that we had to supply. So what happened was during COVID, they shut all the restaurants down out here, and um, we had a restaurant that's like 20 to 25 locations in 5 states, and we were supplying them, large volumes. Well, we couldn't be their exclusive, but we had a dry aged burger on the menu, and which was, from a local processor, and we would, where they hang it, 28 days, and then we were sending 5 pound chubs of it. We were literally overnighting them to all the locations. And then as they shut down to 5 locations takeout only, we were really able to tackle the big elephant in the room. And as they opened up, we launched with them. And so we immediately had a huge customer and had to go out and sell steaks.
Yeah, I think you mentioned an important piece of that. Like you need to nail the burger market first because what is in your guys' math, what percentage of that carcass is made into burger?
About 50% of it goes to burger. And
Yeah.
if you can get a good price for your burger, which is very important, if you can get a decent price with it, then um, you could put top sirloin in there if you need to. If you don't have a home for your tops, if you're long on
Right.
that, you can put some short rib meat in there. And so that helped a lot. But if you're constantly long on ground beef, it destroys your cash flow.
Yeah.
For anybody who's tried to do this and vertically integrate, I'm sure they know what I'm talking about. You could sell out of steaks and still have pallets of ground beef and have nowhere to go with it, and need to harvest more because you're out of steaks.
Yeah. So do you consider it kind of a loss leader where you technically you lose a little bit money on the burger, and then you make up and make a lot of the cash on the steaks, or are you guys profitable on the burger operation right now?
No, we're profitable on the burger operation. That's
Yeah.
the key point to it. That's a big part of it, and that helps the cash flow. Our burger's amazing. It really is, and because of the carrots, um, and this is a big part of the ground beef, I should say, because we're leaving this out. We offer a 70/30 blend, and that's what we lean into with our burger customers because the viscosity of the carrot is so light because the carrots are water instead of grain. You know, uh, Carrots about 90% water. So if a cow's going to eat 15 pounds of grain, now it's got to eat 150 pounds of carrots to get the same, 15 pounds of dry matter. So the viscosity of the fat in it is very light. So we can offer a very fatty ground beef blend, and it's still an enjoyable eating experience. You don't feel heavy afterwards because the B vitamins in it are so high. We had our 70/30 tested, and um, 4 ounces of our 70/30 is 80% of your daily B12. So
Hmm.
it's off the charts with it. And, when we have moms saying, well, wow, I can't get my kids to eat carrots, but I can get, um, they'll eat, ground beef or sloppy joes or a burger or whatever, then it's a win-win.
Yeah, that is interesting. What is what did you guys notice when you started feeding the carrots? What type of health benefits or issues did you run into? Do you have to adjust anything with the animals for them to perform well on the carrots?
Well, because we have been feeding carrots for, decades, we knew that you have to have grass alongside of it. And most of our fields are, big 500 to 1,000 acre pastures, to where they're eating native grasses, and then we can still get, it's rolling foothills, so you can get daily deliveries of carrots coming in there. So, in dumps or belt trailers or bottom dumps. And then the smaller fields where the grass isn't year round, we offer like a sedan grass, so you have to have a little bit of roughage with it. Too much carrots, they don't gain as well. They can overeat on them. It's just, the health benefits of having that scratch in their stomach, it slows the carrot water down, is very beneficial. And they love the carrots. I mean, they come running off the hills for them. It's like candy. We do have to offer a lot of salt. They go through so much salt because of the water in their diet. But the cattle are healthy. I mean, healthy cattle makes healthy beef, makes healthy people. And I think also offering them, because we are like a free range concept, they can get up, move around. It gets the nutrients from the carrots working in their muscle tissue, and so and they're not as exposed, as they would be in a more dense feedlot. Um, we don't see a whole lot of death loss um, or sickness. Even in the summer months when it's really hot, the carrots are cold coming out of the processor, and they'll like lay on the carrots, and it cools them off.
That's cool. Do you notice anything on the ground? Do you try to spread around where you drop the carrots, where you feed them? And are you noticing that, or are you kind of sacrificing areas where you drop the carrots and you're not growing much grass, or you're actually moving those nutrients around the pastures?
A little of both. So we'll spread them out with a box scraper as they come in, and so the carrots will dry. They'll preserve longer. They don't mold up. The ground, the heavily concentrated areas or the more concentrated areas, the grass won't grow for as fast right there. I asked some of our carrot, biologists about it, and they just said, look, it's because there's just so much organic matter at once. It's like compost. So it's, if you left it alone for a little bit, and we have, so we'll notice, we feed for a while, and then some of the big open pastures, you leave it alone, and the grass will come right back. But the heavy concentrated areas, not so much, but it's not farmable ground. It's rolling rocky foothills, things that would only have grass on it for 3 or 4 months anyway.
Yeah. What are you seeing? Because you guys came from more of a conventional background, uh, where you were feeding grain to the cattle. What is like the weight gain and daily gain differences between grain fed and the way you finish with carrots now?
So the grain fed, man, those guys are bigger, faster, stronger. And we never took everything. We never finished cattle on grain. We would just sell, 9 weights to the feedlots. So we never got involved in that. But we're not getting this, 4 or 5 pound a day gain. We do about 2.5 pounds a day. It's a slower gain, and we harvest them, 22 to 24 months out. So where instead of getting their energy from a starch like a grain, they're getting it from a sugar like a natural grass. And so it is a slower gain. It does take longer. There is more time on feed. So, cost wise, it's about the same, but it might cost a little bit more because of the time on feed. But, we're actually chasing the flavor profile and nutrition for our customers.
Right. Do you notice, I guess, is this type of operation something that you could see replicated in different areas, or are you, I guess, you have an advantage, obviously, you're in the carrot producing mecca, but is this something that you could see even other types of root vegetables where people could use and implement it into their cattle operation?
I do. I think I've heard of some potato guys, up north, finishing on potatoes. That's a starch, so you're veering away from the grass fed. Potatoes, though, we fed them in the past, and they're bigger and they can choke on them. So you got to run them over. And they're okay on them if they're not really hungry when they eat them. So we feed carrots alongside of them or grass. But if they're waiting on a potato truck and they're really hungry and they go right to them, they'll eat too fast and they can choke. So there are some disadvantages to it. Um, and then I've heard of some guys doing citrus just north of us, but they mix it with a lot of grass and a lot of some grains with it. They're just adding sugar to the diet. But I do see it replicated, and where we're from, um, we there's a lot of big dairies, and the dairies use a lot of this byproduct as well. So, if they're short on silage in the spring, they can supplement with some wet feeds and dry cow hay and kind of mix that for their ration. So, feeding byproducts is no stranger to our area. But as far as like a carrot finished operation, I feel like our name and our brand's out there, and we've really cornered the market on it. That, and we're 8 and 10 miles from the two big producers, and it costs more to haul a carrot than it does to buy it. So if we were 20 or 30 miles away, the price would double, just because you're hauling water so far.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, what are some of your guys' challenges in the region that you're in? Are you normally really dry? Is it, what is like your paddock or acres type setup where, how many animals can you get on per acre, and then how does the carrots help that?
Oh, so the carrots help, stretch the feed out to make the grass last longer. If you have a 1,000 acre field, we're probably, you know, 20, probably one cow to 25 acres. So the grass is only green for 3 or 4 months, and then it dries out. We have like a weed called fillery that's, you know, super high in protein. The TDN on it's amazing, but once it's dry, and then it turns into a lot of foxtail. So the beauty of California is it doesn't rain that much. And so the carrot growers love it, and they can grow carrots year round. There are other carrot operations, in the Northwest, in the Southeast, but they're seasonal. Where we are positioned, they're bringing carrots in from, down on the border, sometimes from Arizona, and then even from Northern California. They'll bring carrots in for further processing. So we have a year-round operation that can sustain it. The seasonability of it is a little bit different. There's higher flows and lower flows, and we've learned how to bring on the inventory of cattle at the higher flow seasons, and then have them ready to harvest as that season kind of dwindles down. So we've learned to match the cattle with the carrots, which is very hard, very hard.
Yeah, I would assume that. Do you, kind of going into that, in your operation, does everyone, do you try to run one big herd, or are you separating the herds, and like your finishers are getting a higher amount of carrots, your cow calf pairs are getting a different amount? How do you guys differentiate between that?
Yeah, so the cow calf pairs, they might get a load of wheat because there's plenty of grass for them. We're just stretching the grass, and it introduces to the calves. And then when we wean, the weaning is a lot less stressful because the carrot truck is like the big orange mama. So instead of bawling for mom, they might have a little hay, but they're also getting carrots, and it calms them down, and that's their feed because they've been eating it their whole life. But we do also we source some calves from other local producers that are, certified. They're program cattle. So some of them are, even organic when we're not organic, but they'll be hormone free, antibiotic free. We have to do the traceability for our claims. And so we have other producers that we'll source calves from and then bring them in as well. And this is important for us to have a year-round product. So when you try to supply, restaurants um, and menus year round, you have to have cattle from different regions to match that.
Yeah, how many animals are you finishing a week? Are you
Uh,
going week to week basis, or are you going
yeah, week
monthly?
to week. So we do a load a week, anywhere from 30 to 40 a week.
Hey, eco farmers. This is Taylor Henry with Acres USA. I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I enjoy interviewing these folks. If you're serious about regenerative agriculture, I've got an incredible resource you need to check out: the Acres USA membership. You farm in the physical world, and you deserve a physical printed magazine to match. Since 1971, Acres USA magazine has been the leading voice in ecological agriculture. delivering the best insights from regenerative farmers, agronomists, and researchers to help you farm profitably without toxic chemicals. Our membership included physical and digital copies of the magazine each month of the year, which has always been a standard for Acres USA, but we wanted to over-deliver on content. When I acquired this business, I was happy to find that we had years of audio files from presentations at our annual EcoA conference. And guess what? They were hiding. Well, not anymore. We developed this membership portal that gives you access to the recordings from farmers like Gabe Brown, Gary Zimmer, Joel Salatin, and Mark Shepard. We also include recordings of private events. Finally, if you are like me and you like listening to content, we are now producing a membership-only podcast of each issue of the magazine, so you can consume each article while you're out in the field. To make things even sweeter, you'll get discounts on books, workshops, and events to keep expanding your knowledge. So are you ready to take your farming to the next level? Join today for a ridiculously low price at eco-farming.com or see details in the notes. Yeah. Going into, you mentioned you guys were doing some call cow type, go to the sales barn, get some call cows and feed them out on this. Are you still doing that?
No, we've really leaned into Santa Carota. I believe that, we've talked to so many people with, autoimmune and health illnesses that that our meat really helps them and they feel better on it. And so we feel it's our time to lean into a healthier program. And so younger cattle that are certified that we can run through USDA and with all the bells and whistles and get them to the consumer because, with Make America Healthy movement, I think the timing is right for this.
Yeah, for sure. How many, so on your finishers, are you guys bringing in loads of carrots daily, or are you storing carrots on your facility, and what type of challenges do you have with that? Daily. So you
Daily.
have trucks
So
coming daily.
absolutely, yes. So we have like a grass hay that is in one part of the field, and so this Sudan grass that we grow, it's actually grown by the carrot producer that is with their wastewater. So we really try to champion ourselves as users of food waste because when they make a baby carrot, they're not just grown as like a little baby carrot. You could get a couple carrots in it. So we get the tips, the tops, the pieces, the shavings, the ugly carrots, um, all of that. The cows aren't picky, so we get that as well as the feeding the grass hay alongside of it. So we get to champion using water waste and food waste at the same time. But we get daily fresh delivery. Sometimes we'll get up to 20 loads a day. And when they grow those the rainbow carrots, they can't run the purple ones through the juice plant because it makes this like really black tar looking carrot pulp. And so they'll sell them as long as they can. And when they start to seed out, which is they'll get like a stem in the middle of them, almost like a little stick. They've been in too long. Then they just got to harvest them, and sometimes they go straight to the ranch. So daily fresh deliveries, and we offer salt and some supplement alongside of it, with our carrots.
What type of mineral program are they on?
So they're on a sorghum base. We don't do a corn base. And so it's just like a supplement tub that they free choice lick. We kind of let their bodies tell them what they're doing instead of trying to make a TMR. So we let them free choice the tubs, free choice the salt, free choice the roughage, and then the carrots as well.
I was curious if you noticed any sort of minerals that they're getting out of the carrots that they're not consuming as much of from other sources, but it's probably hard to tell if you have a tub.
No, we have a tub, and we really don't use the nutritionist. We just let their bodies tell them. But we do grade choice and prime, so being able to do that is that helps us move into the food service program as well as offer our e-commerce.
So how have you? Obviously, right now we're in an interesting time in beef prices. So I could see there's like this thing happening where I could see a group like you guys to where I could just go sell this at the conventional market and make more than I've ever made before selling beef. But I almost think it's like a trap right now where there's a lot of people getting out of the grass-fed, grass-finished world, and they're just selling back to the conventional market because it's hard to turn away those prices. how have you how have you dealt with that? Do what is your word to people? You guys have been in this beef business a long time. I'm sure it's important for you to continue these direct to consumer and these relationships. But how difficult is it not to just send them down the road and make more than you've ever? I'm sure your dad and grandpa could have dreamed about making these prices on calves.
Very difficult. We actually sold some steers not too long ago just to help pay some bills, clean up some debt, because we were going to get more for them and cash flow faster than we ever had. And our 40 head loads have turned into 30 head loads just to kind of hunker down. And we've dropped a few food service customers, and then we're leaning into the e-commerce program. I think that is where it keeps longer. You can store it as a frozen item, and then you can ship it to food deserts and people who don't have access to healthier meat. But you know, with like you're saying, with this with these prices, we've sold some of our calves just to kind of help pay for the Santa Carota operation.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to ignore them. Um, I worry about people, you know, giving up on those other markets and just moving back into this. And how long, like in your guys' expert opinion, how long do you see this market either continuing to increase or remaining where it's at?
Well, with the national herd down so much, it's really tough. These you see, stock market crash yesterday, and feeder cattle are still through the roof. Sourcing cattle is really tough for us too. Sometimes we're waiting on guys to preg their heifers and just buy the opens. It's not easy, but I think it becomes kind of a moral fight too. We have to, if you believe in it, you have to keep fighting for it, no matter what it takes, and it'll turn around. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you how long that'll take. I think the short-term solution for a lot of this, you see a lot of beef on dairy cross going in, and they're filling up feedlots, and that as much as you know want to shy away from factory farming, it's serving a purpose and it's filling a hole. So we're I don't have the answer for the long term. I just know that we're going to stay in the fight as absolute long as we can and go down fighting because, uh, you know, clean food is medicine for a lot of people. And why should we have that, $2,000 EpiPen, when we can get out there and do some good. And we're big believers. We believe that God put us on this mission and that we're going to see this thing through.
Yeah. How have you adjusted your guys' price to either the end consumer or your suppliers to adjust to the markets? Because I think a lot of times the grass fed market seems to lag behind a little bit, and you don't get the bump that you probably deserve for holding an animal an extra 8 to 12 months. Have you guys had luck with getting that premium price for the grass fed product?
We have,
Compared,
we
yeah,
have, and we do, as far as because we do grade and we can go into some of these food service accounts, but man, last year was tough. That was a tough economy for a white tablecloth program. And when you ask for more money, you can lose customers too. You ask for another 50 cents a pound, another dollar a pound for your ribeyes. Strip loins for New York's are just so seasonal. So you might be getting $12 to $15 wholesale, one month, and then after the holidays, it just crashes in the commodities seven. Um, but that really pushed us into the direct to consumer market. So as the more we said we needed in a food service matter to supply our higher end um, restaurants, the more that pushed back, the more we just fell into, look, we can do direct to consumer. We don't have to sell it, we because how we do it is we box them in a packer and then they're in primals and then that will go to a distributor, which then um, sells to the restaurants. But if it doesn't move, it's got a 21 to 30-day wet age, then we'll just further process it, put it into individual steaks, and set it for a direct to consumer. So the market has actually, to your question, trying to get the premium that we need just to keep going. The market's pushed back on us, and so it's pushed us into a direct to consumer model.
Yeah, which that's a safety net for your business over the long term. I think. I mean, that's a much better margins. You have control over growing that, decreasing it, whatever you may be. But what?
But and for so long, the freezer was the boneyard. That
Yeah,
that's where things just got stuck, and you hope for the holidays or something. But now it's not. It's an avenue to get it to the home chefs, and I mean, you saw what COVID did, where everyone's and pellet grills. People can have an amazing brisket at home, and they're sharing their own little cooking channels, and so being able to get that restaurant quality to them at home or that healthy product to them at home, I think that's the future. I mean, you look and see what the internet's taking over, from magazines to digital publications to mom and pop shops to, is now taken over by Amazon. And so this is, I feel that it's the future of it.
yeah. How important has been the relationship with the processor? Do you guys own the processing facility, or do you have a
No,
partnership
we
with
are
someone?
fortunate enough to be about 5 hours from a large packer that actually has set aside days for smaller customers and labels. So we can send a whole load of cattle to them, and with packing and cutting instructions. And so we'll harvest on a Thursday, and then they'll hang over the weekend, and then Monday we get a grade report, and then we finalize our packing instructions, and we start packing. And that is a godsend because I think there's a lot of folks out, in rural country that don't have those kind of opportunities. They don't have available processors. They might only be a state-owned processor where they can only do, halves and wholes and quarters, and so it can really bottleneck the flow of product, the cash flow. So we've been fortunate enough to have that. This processor even handles our exports for us. So we've done a little bit of Hong Kong business, and so that really helps. But we're just blessed to be in the region of the carrot, and in the region to have a processor like that.
Yeah. And then from the processor, are you guys doing the distribution where you're holding the product? You have a cold storage facility. Who handles actually getting the product to the customer?
So we own the product, live, and then handle the packing, the processing, and then we get a daily inventory. And from there, that's our sales sheet. So we sell off of that to, broadline distributors. And so we have some great, I have a seafood distributor in the Northeast. We have some smaller ones in the Southeast. There's a great distributor on the West Coast that handles pretty much everything west of the Rockies, and they do a great job telling our story. So we sell to the distributor, and from there, the distributor owns it, and they're on their own. But we make a point to, bring them out to the ranch, do ranch tours, let all the sales reps see what's going on. We bring chefs out there with us, and they get to cook at the end of the day with cows in the background, and we feel that telling the story right and the transparency is very important.
Hey there. Did you attend our EcoEgg conference this year in Madison, Wisconsin? Well, if you didn't, or if you did, we've got the recordings now available. Get on-demand access to every session with the EcoEgg recordings. Learn directly from the pioneers of soil health, livestock integration, and profitable regenerative systems, all at your own pace. Speakers include Gabe Brown, Alan Williams, John Kemp, Joel Salatin, and a lot more. We also have additional products that include the full-day workshops done by Matt Powers, John Kemp, Nigel Palmer, Jordan Green, Mark Shepard, and Austin Unruh. These workshops are in depth and will help you dig deep on the presenters' topics. Grab your recordings now at conference.ecoag.com/24 recordings or find the link in the notes. Because the best investment you can make is in your own knowledge. Now back to the show. In your direct-to-consumer e-commerce business, who holds the product and then ships it for you?
So we retain ownership. This is tough. The cash flow side of this, you want to lean into e-commerce, you want to lean into direct to consumer, but holding the inventory is so tough. And so we own it, and we work with a shipper called Delivery Cold, and we actually ship out of Texas with them because it's easier to hit 48 states from the middle of the country than trying to ship to New York from California, because it's a 3 or 4 day truck ride, and if it gets held over at a distribution center at like a FedEx or UPS. Monday morning, there's a melted meat box, a bad Yelp review, and it's a train wreck. So we partnered with someone that does shipping, that's you know has available dry ice on hand all the time, and so but the we don't get paid for the product until the product sells, and we split the sell with them. So it's a tough model. It's very scalable, but we're constantly have to promote our brand and promote sales and be it's another full-time job, I mean, if you had a warehouse full of widgets, you would spend full time selling the widgets. So um, it's created an entire new set of problems for us, but it's also created an entire new set of customers for us as well.
Yeah, it's a whole other business. I think that's the difficult thing for folks to tackle. What does your team look like? So how many people internally do you guys, do you have kind of like a core group that handles the admin side of things? How large is your team?
It's me and a secretary for sales in the office, and we've got a gal who helps us with social media. She does an amazing job, and she gets horseback and she can ride rope and get after it. And so and then about 4 guys on the ranch, and they run the day to day, and they do anything from fixing tractors and water lines to sorting up loads of cattle. And then when they're shorthanded, I'll jump in, and when there's even more shorthandedness, my kids will jump in, and and then my kids will go help me with sales. And if we have to cook for a big function, sometimes the cowboys come, help us cook, and we all kind of do everything. We have to wear a lot of hats, and I think people probably, people in ag know that you're a mechanic one day and a plumber the next, and you're trying to learn to market it the following day. So it's one of the next, but there's half a dozen of us on a good day.
Yeah. No, we do a similar type model. We have sales guys and customer service people who all know how to move the cattle and fix water lines and get the
Yeah.
fence get the fence to where it needs to be.
Sometimes you're emailing, on a dirt road while hauling cattle, and hey, I'm going to be out of service, and then I got to put the order in, and yes, it's a lot.
Yeah. One thing that's you know important in your guys' operation, and I think it's important in ag in general, is handing it on to the next generation. So you're the third generation in this operation. What do you take away from like what your grandpa did and what your dad did to actually give you guys responsibility and hand this thing off and give you an operation in good hands, versus what you've seen generally speaking across the ag world?
Well, we're in California, I see it a lot, and I'm sure it's happening everywhere. Is a lot of private equities going into some of the bigger ag groups, try to make slower, steady margins. But with this, call it a startup, if you want. Even though my grandfather started feeding carrots, my father and I are partners with Santa Carota, and my kids have learned how to wear a lot of different hats. They've learned that 2, 3 in the morning doesn't mean anything, and you got to go do stuff, um, and the never give up kind of attitude. And it's okay to reinvent the wheel constantly because the world's changing. And if we're still doing the same thing in 10 years, we're out of business. So, um, you know, I think that the best thing you can do is just pack your kids with them. If you've ever made good cow dogs, the best thing you do is just take them with you every day till they learn the job. And I think that's the best thing with the kids too. I have two boys that they're 12 and 13, and they are, they both can move cows. They've both been on sales meetings with me. They've been, looked at cattle in other states and been all over. And I think that teaching them that we aren't just ranchers, but we're entrepreneurs also is very important. Very important because the world is changing fast. I mean, when we were kids, they didn't even have cell phones. So now look at them, your kids have them, and you can text your kid what time their baseball practice gets out. So the world is changing, and teaching them that we are entrepreneurs just as much as we are stewards of the land and ranchers is very important.
Yeah. I know some operations where you'll have a 30 or 40-year-old son working with his dad, and he still has never seen the financials or the back end of the business. When did your dad start introducing you to some of those things and start handing over some of the responsibility to you?
So we have a whole different model. My grandfather was a fireman to kind of subsidize the ranch, as an income. My dad was a fireman to help kind of grow the ranch. I fought forest fires. So did my brother. So in the fall we would get laid off from our seasonal fire crews, and then we'd pick back up in late spring, early summer. So we got to work the ranch. And then around the same time, 2009, I actually took over my grandfather's carrot business, and so he was selling carrots, and then he was in charge. He had the contract for the coal carrots, so I took that over. But my dad had a cow herd and land, and so I grew that into dairy sales and pet food and um, anything we could do with vegetable waste and carrot waste. And so I actually have handled the office side and the financial side more than my dad. And my dad handles the live cattle side, and I handle um, the marketing and the meat side. So we each kind of have our own lane we stay in, because if we were in the same lane, we would bump heads like nobody's business. And I think that's kind of it's been a great model to come at backwards. It's like a reverse seer for a company, and and it's worked for us. He lets me do the meat sales and look at the books and the numbers, and we go over them together constantly. And but I don't tell him how to buy cows, and he doesn't tell me how to sell meat. But I help him, and he helps me, and we just assist each other along the way.
Have you ever ventured? So you said you were into pet foods. Have you guys gotten into combining those carrots with the actual beef at all to produce
No,
pet
we've
food?
we've looked at it, but we're so stretched thin, and you're trying to rub nickels together to add on another idea and another process. It would be really hard. I mean, we'll dry some of our excess or excess carrots and sell them into it for an ingredient company for the processing. It's an overflow for the carrots when we don't have enough cattle for them or there's too much carrots.
Yeah. Well, it's smart. You have avenues for all of your different products. What is your message to new producers, either even people getting into the beef world now? I think we're going to have kind of an influx of folks pivoting from other type of ventures into the beef world with the prices the way they are. What is your, I guess, message to them? How do we have really successful ranches and ranchers over the next 20, 30 years?
I mean, watch your pennies so your dollars take care of themselves is important, but also transparency. We have to tell our story. There's a lot of brands and great marketing out there that you don't even know if they're owned by a big packer or a foreign entity. So I think social media is huge. I think podcasts like this are amazing, and you have to tell your story, even if it's just fixing a water line or something funny that happened on the ranch. I mean, we had a post that had 4 or 5 million views, and it was literally of a carrot truck unloading that cows were just running to eat the carrots. I've been watching carrot trucks unload my whole life, and I didn't even think anything of it, but the world had never seen that. So I think that people want to know where their food comes from, and so the more we can tell our story of how we grow it, that they get to decide. And if if somebody's not being transparent about it, that's who you want to question. But we have to get out there and tell our story, because we've never had the tools to do this before like we have. Never. For people to see what we do on a day-to-day basis and talk to each other and raise each other up and just show what we do, bring the family involved. No one got to see that before, but now we really get to see that. So I think telling our story is the most important thing we could do.
Yeah, marketing 101, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, that's where do you guys see where do you see the most scaling happening for your operation? Is
I
it
think
the direct
direct
to
to
consumer
consumer.
e-commerce? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think the more that people are digging into, man, COVID woke a lot of people up on they had a lot of time on the internet to research, I feel like. And we saw the bottleneck of cattle, when a packing house goes down and the supply chain. And so um, I feel that for transparency to tell our story and to get our product to people, that I see direct to consumer and e-commerce, we're going to just keep leaning into that more and more and more because less and less people are flying to Vegas for $1,000 steak when they can make the best steak you'll ever have is in your backyard. So if we can get that to them, I think that's very important. The logistics of it are tough, and we're all dealing with that. And for anybody listening, I mean, we all struggle with getting product to the consumer, but the supply chain, the more we chink at it, and every time we get a toehold and a foothold, the better it is for all of us. And we're going to keep leaning into that.
Yeah. And that's like the challenge of it, I think, is if you can figure out how to get that steak or that box of meat to the consumer, that's like half the battle in this game.
It's huge, and we never set out to do that. I'm sure you didn't either. I mean, we're ranchers. We're not shippers, We're not Amazon or FedEx, and so learning how to do that, and then the dry ice, and you can't overnight dry ice because it's a hazmat, and then so you have to. And if you try to overnight something, then it's super expensive, and you're pricing the beef out of where it should be. It's very tough. And then once it leaves the shipping facility or your facility, it's out of your hands. It's literally on someone else's hands that you don't know if the truck's going to break down or they call in sick or anything can happen. And it's a perishable product. And this could be someone's anniversary meal or they're buying in bulk, because you offer to sell and they're going to fill their freezer with it. Anything can go wrong in the transportation side of it. But I do think that we're fine tuning it, we're honing in on it, and we're having to learn new skills, And I think the next generation coming up is going to be a big key component of that. That's not scared to learn new skills, learn new technology, and learn new logistics.
What are some of the main questions or feedback you get? Like someone gets your beef and they're like, "Oh, it looks a little bit different than what I'm used to." Do you try to educate them before they buy on that, or are you seeing any sort of pushback where it's like, "Oh, this is kind of weird looking meat"?
It's not too much different, I mean, uh, I think homegrown meat looks different than store-bought meat sometimes, but um, we do. I had to learn. You don't tell a chef how to cook it, but in at home you can say, "Hey guys, look, this cooks a little bit faster." So if you've ever cooked grass-fed meat, it cooks faster. Ours is the same way, but ours because of the carrot, the moisture in the carrot, it fills that muscle tissue like a water balloon. It stretches and the elasticity expands it, and so it's very tender. It's very juicy, and it can cook really fast. And so you can overcook it. If you leave it on, if you try to cook it like a conventional steak, you can overcook our meat a little bit. So that can be a struggle. And if people ask, hey, the fat's a little yellow or whatnot, but look, carrots are orange, the majority of the carrots we feed are orange, and what the animal eats is what it puts out. But the nutrition is amazing, and we don't get as much pushback because they know they're getting something different. If you're expecting a corn-fed steak and you order ours, then it's not going to be the same. But if you know that you're going to get something different, then and have an open mind, I think you'll be just fine.
Yeah. Well, what is where do you guys have events on your farm fairly often?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we try. They're kind of just winding down, but we try to have folks out in the spring where they're typically been our food service customers and chefs, but we'd love to have folks out, just show them what we do. Last year we rented a bunch of side by sides and just did a big 4 mile tour and showed everyone the green hills and had some chefs cook for us at the end and. Uh, so occasionally, but they're not as scheduled as some other ranches.
Yeah. So, what is the best place for folks to find out some more information about your guys' operation and buy some meat from you?
Yeah, you can go to our website at santacarota.com. That's SANTACAROTA.com. You can find us on social media. We're on X, we're on Instagram. If you want to go back through and kind of see the history of our development, our Instagram page is a great spot because that was our first social media we launched on, as well as Facebook. But you can see the progression of what we've done and where we started, and you can find links to purchase our meat on as well there.
Awesome. Well, I would definitely recommend anyone going to their socials. I mean, you guys are running kind of a masterclass on how to market direct-to-consumer type businesses, and I've been following you guys for a long time, and you do a really good job. So thanks for all the work that you do, and keep fighting the good fight.
Awesome. Hey, Taylor, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Justin. Thank you for listening to the Acres USA podcast, a podcast production of Acres USA. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and other popular podcast platforms. Acres USA is North America's oldest publisher on production-scale organic and regenerative farming. For more than 50 years, our mission has been to help farmers, ranchers, and market gardeners grow food profitably, regeneratively, and with nature in mind. Find our books and other Acres USA media and learn about Acres USA events at acresusa.com. Read our online magazine at members.acresusa.com, and we'd like to thank Acres USA staff for their contributions to producing this podcast. This episode was edited and engineered by Weston Larson of Acres USA. And we're grateful to our guests for taking the time to talk with us about their experience.